The heavy air in the meeting room stifled him more than his tie knot. Rodrigo, the impeccable CEO, felt every fiber of his being scream for more. More control, more power, more decisions in his hands. That project, a turning point for the company, was being discussed by a team he saw as hesitant and ineffective. His eyes scanned the table, seeing not collaborators, but pieces on a chessboard he needed to move with precision. A spark of irritation ignited in his chest, quickly transforming into a voracious fire. He needed to impose his vision, mold reality to his will, or the world would collapse. The pressure was immense, but the adrenaline coursing through his veins propelled him to seek even greater authority, to crush any resistance, to prove that only he held the key to success. Cold sweat trickled down his back, but his expression remained impassive, a mask of unwavering determination. Just like the eagle, soaring above the mountains is not just an act of flight, but a declaration of sovereignty. From its privileged vantage point, it surveys the landscape. Every movement below, every shadow cast, is meticulously evaluated. There is no room for uncertainty. Its territorial dominion is absolute, built on the acuity of its vision and the unquestionable strength of its talents. It doesn't share the sky. It rules it. Its seemingly serene circular flight is in fact constant vigilance, an unrelenting monitoring of every inch of its domain. It is the king of the skies, and its presence commands respect. A predator at the top of the food chain, whose existence is defined by the ability to dominate and survive. What leads us to this incessant pursuit of control? This urge to dominate our own destiny, the people around us, the very chaos of existence? Is it that, like the eagle, we are driven by a primal instinct to reign over our own small piece of the universe? Or can this need for control, when taken to extremes, transform into the most imprisoning of cages, suffocating the freedom and spontaneity we so deeply desire? Join us on this journey to unravel the mysteries of the human mind and its parallel with animal behavior. Aina's fingertips tapped nervously on her desk, mirroring the frantic pace of her heart. Every unanswered email, every delay from a colleague, every minor alteration to her meticulous plan became a trigger for escalating anxiety. The final project presentation, which she was coordinating, was approaching, and the feeling that something would slip out of her control was paralyzing, albeit on a psychological plane. Just days before the presentation. But true freedom lies in the ability to let go when necessary. Just as the eagle, which dominates the sky but bows to the laws of the wind, humans find their strength not in imposing their will at all costs, but in accepting impermanence and adaptability. Understanding that not everything can be controlled is the first step to flying higher without the weight of expectation, and perhaps to finding a deeper form of control. That of the self, the ability to manage one's own reactions and emotions in the face of the uncontrollable. What price do we pay for trying to control the uncontrollable? And what do we gain by allowing ourselves to flow with life? Her body reacted with an electric shock. The carefully constructed plan collapsed. It was time to react, to adapt to the unexpected. The eagle, upon sensing a sudden change in air current or the unexpected escape of prey, does not hesitate. It adjusts its flight, recalculates its route, and, if necessary, completely changes its hunting strategy. It does not cling to a fixed plan, but adapts to the dynamics of the environment. The choice between insisting on the original plan, which was now unfeasible, and accepting the imposed change revealed Anna's internal conflict between the rigidity of control and the flexibility of adaptation. Her mind screamed for resistance, but reality demanded malleability. Our prefrontal cortex, responsible for planning and decision-making, works tirelessly to predict and manage our environment, an evolutionary adaptation to ensure safety and survival. Just as the eagle optimizes its vision for hunting, our brain optimizes our thoughts to control variables, reduce uncertainties, and minimize perceived threats. Ana's need for the project to be perfect was not just a pursuit of excellence, but an attempt to control all variables that could lead to an undesirable outcome. Studies in neuroscience show that uncertainty activates the amygdala, the brain region associated with fear, pushing us to seek control as a way to reduce this activation. It is an echo of the instinctive need for dominance over our own environment, an ancestral heritage that drives us to shape the world in our image, seeking predictability where often only chaos exists. She reviewed spreadsheets for the 10th time, moved files back and forth on her screen, in a frantic attempt to organize the chaos she felt bubbling within her. Her breath grew shallow, her shoulders tense, and a headache throbbed in her temples. Coffee, once an ally, now seemed only to fuel her agitation. "It has to be perfect," she murmured to herself, like a mantra, as anxiety tightened its grip on her throat, making the air feel thick and unbreathable. The image of impending failure haunted her, feeding her compulsion to micromanage every detail, every comma. High above, among rocky peaks and air currents, the golden eagle builds its nest in inaccessible locations, an impenetrable fortress against predators and bad weather. From there, it casts its scrutinizing gaze over the vast valley, a vision 8 times more powerful than human sight. Every movement of a potential prey, every shift in the wind, is perceived and analyzed with surgical precision. It doesn't act on impulse. Its strategy is calculated, its attack swift. Its dominion over the territory is not merely physical, but sensory and cognitive, a constant vigilance that ensures its survival and that of its offspring. It is the personification of vigilance and dominance, a predator that leaves nothing to chance, whose success depends on its ability to anticipate and control its surroundings. Its patience is legendary, waiting for the exact moment to strike, an example of strategic and efficient control. The human quest for control echoes the predatory nature of the eagle. Suddenly, an urgent email appeared on Ana's screen. The company director had requested a drastic change in the project's scope. Control is a comforting illusion that gives us a sense of security. It was a gray Monday when the call came, relentless as a sentence. Joe, accustomed to having every aspect of his life under control, his rising career, suddenly, the panoramic view gives way to panic. The ability to maneuver to helplessness. It can rapidly lose altitude. Its wings, once symbols of power, become a useless burden. The choice was clear. Either he continued to fight the uncontrollable, sinking into frustration and self-destruction, or he sought a new way of living, adapting to his new condition. It was like the injured eagle that, instead of insisting on flying, seeks a safe refuge to recover, temporarily accepting its limitation to ensure survival. The climax was not a cure, but the acceptance of the absence of control over certain aspects of his life. An act of surrender that paradoxically freed him to seek new forms of meaning and purpose. And its body, once agile, fights against gravity, but often the beginning of a journey of self-discovery and resilience. Just as the injured eagle learns to glide in a new way or seeks a new nest, humans find in vulnerability the opportunity to redefine their strength. Wisdom lies not in controlling everything, but in discerning what can be controlled and gracefully accepting what cannot. In the void of loss, we often discover the true essence of our existence and the beauty of allowing ourselves to be imperfect, yet whole. What do we cling to when everything we know falls apart? And what emerges from the ashes of our powerlessness? In its fall, the instinct for survival screams. But the reality of losing control asserts itself, and it finds itself vulnerable, exposed to dangers it once scorned, struggling to find a foothold before hitting the ground. Panic takes over, and the once queen of the skies is reduced to a defenseless creature, at the mercy of forces it once dominated. Impeccable health, meticulously organized apartment, every meal planned. Every minute of his day timed. Heard the doctor's voice announce the diagnosis. an autoimmune disease, progressive and incurable. The ground opened beneath his feet. The routines he so cherished, the strict diets, the long-term plans, everything seemed to vanish in an instant. He felt like a ship adrift, rudderless, sailless, at the mercy of an uncontrollable storm. A wave of despair and rage washed over him as he desperately tried to cling to any semblance of dominion over his own body and future, as if he could, by sheer willpower, reverse the inevitable. Air left his lungs, and the world seemed to spin in slow motion, revealing the fragility of his existence. In rare and dramatic instances, an eagle, majestic in its flight, can be struck by a fierce gale, a hunter's bullet, or an unexpected injury. The human experience of losing control over health, finances, or relationships mirrors the vulnerability of a falling eagle. Our brain, programmed to anticipate and mitigate threats, enters a state of deep alarm when control is abruptly removed. The amygdala, responsible for fear responses, becomes overactive, triggering fight or flight reactions, even when the threat is abstract, like the uncertainty of the future. Joa's internal struggle to accept his illness was a manifestation of this cerebral battle. His primary instinct for control clashed with an undeniable reality of powerlessness, generating anguish and a profound sense of helplessness. Neuroscience suggests that this inability to control external events can lead to learned helplessness, a state of passivity and depression where the individual gives up trying to change their situation. Joe, after weeks of denial and frustrated attempts to control his illness with alternative methods, found himself facing the need to accept reality. Losing control is not the end. Sophia was the architect of her own life, every detail meticulously planned. From the weekly menu to her children's chore list and her work reports, nothing escaped her controlling gaze. She believed that by keeping everything on a tight leash, she guaranteed perfection and avoided any unforeseen events. Her perfectionism led her to redo others' work, correct minor details. Exhausted by her demands and the lack of space to be himself, exploded in a fit of rage, accusing her of not letting him breathe. This mirrored the behavior of an eagle that in captivity may start pulling out its own feathers in self-destructive despair, or beating itself against the bars in a futile attempt to escape. Sophia had to confront the painful truth. Her control did not bring perfection, but rather the destruction of the bonds she cherished most. The choice was between maintaining the illusion of control and losing her family, or letting go and risking the uncertainty of freedom, allowing others to have their own space and autonomy, and anticipate every possible flaw, built with our own hands, that prevents us from experiencing the fullness of life. True strength lies not in dominating the world around us, but in mastering ourselves, learning to trust the flow of existence and accepting that perfection lies in imperfection. Just as the eagle, when set free, can rediscover its purpose in the skies, humans find freedom by letting go of what they cannot and should not control. It's an invitation to embrace vulnerability and the beauty of imperfection, allowing life to unfold in its own complexity. What are we sacrificing in our relentless pursuit of control? And what could we gain by freeing ourselves from this tyranny? However, the price of this incessant pursuit was high. Sleepless nights, constant tension with her husband and children, who felt suffocated by her omnipresent presence, and an exhaustion that weighed on her shoulders like a mountain. Every mistake, hers or others, was a reason for self-criticism or blame, and the likeness of living seemed to have been replaced by an overwhelming burden, an armor that, instead of protecting her, prevented her from breathing. Consider an eagle, born for the heights, captured and kept in captivity. Its wings, designed to cover miles in a single flight, can now only spread in a limited space. Its keen vision, once used to hunt across vast plains, is now confined to the bars of the cage. The instinct for freedom, for dominion over the skies, is frustrated with every attempt to fly. It may be fed and protected, but the essence of its existence, the freedom of choice and control over its own destiny, is denied. Its strength turns into apathy, its brilliance into a distant gaze, dreaming of the sky it can no longer reach. The eagle, a symbol of power and freedom, becomes a melancholic creature, wasting away in its own powerlessness, a victim of external control that strips it of its true nature. Neurology and evolutionary psychology show us that the need for control, when it becomes excessive, can chronically activate the stress system. Sophia's attempt to control every aspect of her life, though motivated by a desire for security and perfection, led her to a constant state of alert, similar to a caged animal. Cortisol, the stress hormone, floods her body, impacting her physical and mental health, leading to problems like insomnia, irritability, and even cardiovascular diseases. Just as the caged eagle suffers from muscular and mental atrophy, Sophia experienced an atrophy of her own spontaneity and joy, trading the freedom of living for the illusion of control, a self-imposed prison that prevented her from enjoying life. Sophia's breaking point came when her youngest son. Excessive control is an invisible prison. For Carlos, a successful investment broker, life was a game of chess, and he considered himself the grandmaster. Instead of fighting against the force of the wind and rain, often rises above it. The human brain craves patterns and predictability. His meticulously controlled life was collapsing. And wisdom lies not in controlling the weather, but in learning to fly with it. The illusion of control keeps us chained to fear and rigidity, while the acceptance of impermanence frees us to embrace uncertainty with resilience and curiosity. Just as the eagle finds calm above the chaos, humans flourish when they understand that true strength lies not in the ability to manipulate the world, but in the ability to adapt to it, to find opportunities in adversity, and to trust in their own capacity for overcoming. What would happen if, for a moment, we stopped fighting the currents and allowed ourselves to fly with the wind, trusting in our ability to adapt? It was time for the confrontation. Either he continued to insist on his old methods, sinking further into denial and ruin, or he accepted that the only thing he could control was his own response to the situation. Just like the eagle that, instead of being swept away by the storm, uses the chaos to its advantage, Carlos had to let go of the illusion of dominion and learn to navigate uncertainty, seeking new strategies, diversifying his investments, and, above all, accepting that life, by nature, is uncontrollable. He had to abandon the persona of the chess master and become a surfer of the unpredictable waves of the market. And when chaos sets in, it tries to impose order, even if that order is illusory. Carlos, in his quest to control the financial market, ignored the complexity of adaptive systems, where small changes can have unpredictable effects, the famous butterfly effect. Unlike the eagle, which intuitively recognizes the limits of its power over nature, humans often refuse to accept a lack of control, generating deep frustration and a cycle of anxiety. Cognitive psychology explains that this illusion of control is a way for us to feel more secure, even if reality proves otherwise. It does not try to control the meteorological chaos. It uses the storm's updrafts to gain altitude, finding calm above the clouds. It recognizes the superior force of nature and, instead of resisting, adapts, transforming a threat into an opportunity to reach new heights, demonstrating an intrinsic wisdom about the limits of its own control. The eagle does not despair in the face of the uncontrollable. It uses it to its advantage, showing that true mastery is not about dominating, but about flowing with the larger forces that surround us. Every move, every investment, was calculated with pinpoint precision, ignoring any factor not under his dominion. He lived in the bubble of his own expertise, convinced that, with data and analysis, he could predict and manipulate the market, controlling every variable to ensure maximum profit. His confidence was unshakable, and he viewed any uncertainty as a sign of weakness to be overcome. However, the global economy is a living organism, unpredictable and chaotic, influenced by factors far beyond any spreadsheet or algorithm. Carlos watched, with a growing pang of panic, news of an impending financial crisis, feeling the foundation of his security crumble. While his mind stubbornly refused to acknowledge the imminent disaster, clinging to a rationality that no longer applied. When a storm forms in the mountains, the eagle, our illusion of control, often is a defense mechanism against the anxiety generated by the unpredictability of the world. The economic crisis hit Carlos with full force, bringing him to the brink of bankruptcy. Life is a flight amidst constant storms. Maria was the driving force behind her small handicraft business. Every production line, every design detail, every customer interaction was supervised by her. However, unlike Sophia, Maria exercised conscious control, not driven by fear, but by passion and a desire for excellence. A balance where vigilance and organization promote security and efficiency without stifling autonomy and creativity, threatening the stability of her company with lower prices and aggressive strategies. Instead of panicking and trying to control every move of the opponent, Maria focused on what she could control: the quality of her products, the innovation in her designs, and customer service, strengthening the loyalty of her customer base. She observed the competition with the same attention that the eagle observes a potential threat to its territory, a strategic vigilance, not an obsession. Maria's choice was to strengthen her own defenses and strategies, instead of wearing herself out in a futile war for an illusory control over the market, proving that adaptability is the greatest weapon. Maria, unlike the previous examples, did not seek to control the uncontrollable, but rather to positively influence what was within her reach. It allows us to protect what is valuable, direct our efforts, and build a life with purpose, without overwhelming ourselves with the illusion of omnipotence. Just as the eagle, which wisely dominates its territory, humans find true security not in trying to manipulate every detail of the universe, but in the ability to discern where their control is truly effective and where acceptance and adaptability are the greatest virtues. It is the art of knowing when to act and when to let go, of trusting the process and one's own capacity to respond. How can we transform our need for control into a positive force that propels us, instead of trapping us in a relentless pursuit of perfection? Focusing on quality and the well-being of her team. Her attitude reflects the eagle that uses its dominance to protect what is essential, instead of trying to dominate everything. It is a control that emerges from trust and responsibility, not from fear and insecurity, activating brain circuits associated with satisfaction and well-being, instead of chronic stress. It is the control that empowers, rather than imprisons. She delegated tasks with confidence, but always kept a watchful eye, ensuring quality was maintained and that her employees had the necessary support to develop their skills. Her control was a compass that guided the team, not a chain that bound them, allowing the company to grow organically and healthily, without succumbing to chaos or inefficiency, and without stifling her collaborators' creativity. She inspired trust and responsibility, creating a harmonious and productive work environment. The eagle, in its wild nature, does not seek to control every breeze or every movement of the forest. Its control is focused and strategic, an example of efficient resource management and protection. It guards its territory to protect its nest and offspring from predators, ensures there is enough food for survival, and establishes clear boundaries for other animals. Its vigilance is an act of protection and survival, not total domination. It flies freely, trusting its instincts and its ability to react to challenges, without the need to micromanage every aspect of the ecosystem around it. It is a control that emerges from wisdom and necessity, not compulsion or fear. Management psychology and ethology show us that there is an optimal control point. A new competitor emerged in the market, Healthy control is a tool for empowerment, not imprisonment. Pedro was a former executive who lived a life of excess and control. His schedule was meticulously filled, every decision calculated. It's a leap into the void, a surrender to the wind. And Eastern philosophies teach us the electricity failed, and his house was cut off from the world, isolated amidst the force of nature, but of profound wisdom and courage. It is the understanding that we are not the architects of every detail of life, but part of a larger flow, interconnected with nature and the universe. Just as the eagle surrenders to the wind and finds freedom in the vast sky, humans find peace when they trust life's process, accept impermanence, and embrace uncertainty as an inherent part of existence. It is the freedom to be, without the need to control, to flow with the tides of life and discover beauty in spontaneity. What do you need to let go of to finally take flight and experience true freedom? Instead of the panic he would have felt in the past, a surprising calm enveloped him. He lit candles, prepared a simple meal with the resources he had, and observed nature outside without trying to control it, without worrying about what he was missing. The eagle, amidst the storm, does not try to stop it. It finds shelter or uses it to propel itself. Pedro's choice was to accept the absence of control, to surrender to the present moment. And it was in this abandonment that he found a deep peace, realizing that life continued, even without his reins. And that true strength lay in his ability to adapt and be resilient. That the ability to let go of control is intrinsically linked to our mental health and well-being. The brain, when not in a constant state of alert to control the environment, has the opportunity to regenerate, to connect with the present, and to experience gratitude. Pedro's journey reflects the young eagle, the initial fear of letting go of control, the struggle against nature, and finally, the epiphany that true freedom lies in accepting what is. It is a process of reconnection with intuition and the natural rhythm of life, freeing us from the tyranny of shoulds and the relentless pursuit of unattainable perfection. A trust in its own nature and the laws of the air. It doesn't try to control every gust. It uses the wind's force to rise, to glide, to explore the vastness of the sky. It is an act of surrender and, at the same time, of supreme freedom. It lets go of the nest's ties and surrenders to its true vocation, limitless flight. The initial fear is overcome by intuition and trust in its own wings, a symbol of detachment and of embracing the unknown with courage. And he believed that maximum productivity was the key to happiness. After a stress-induced breakdown, he retreated to a small house in the countryside, seeking a simpler life and a refuge from constant pressure. At first, the absence of control over his schedule, his goals, and the frantic pace of the city terrified him. He tried to impose his old routine on the new environment, organizing every seed in his garden, every book on his shelf, every household chore with the same rigidity as a corporate project. But nature, in its wisdom, resisted. Seeds sprouted when they wanted, rains came unannounced, and time seemed to have its own rhythm. Slowly, Pedro began to observe, to feel, to allow himself to be guided by the natural flow of things, abandoning the rigidity that defined him and had led him to burnout. Imagine the young eagle, after months of learning in the nest, being encouraged by its parents to take its first flight. The neuroscience of mindfulness. One day, a strong storm hit Pedro's region. Letting go of control is not an act of weakness.